All right. Great. The show. Welcome again to the GCA Newbie Day. We don't have any newbies, so we'll focus on the GCA. We're going to talk a little bit about the U.S. division, our organization, who to contact. We'll give you an introduction, just like some major differences between ICAO and airspace class, VFR and some major airports. Simple weather items. This is named for newbies because the weather is really similar here, like the MADARs and RBSM airspace. So we'll go through that really quick. We're going to focus mostly on the clearance delivery and given IFR clearances. That's a major difference I want a lot of Europeans and South Americans to really focus on. We'll talk a little bit about ground. That's pretty easy. Tower is also easy. And we'll get into just a little bit of the approach phraseology. I'm sure a lot of you want to get on, the approach positions. And then the end of it, we'll talk about call signs, how to form call signs, and different things that we say on the radio. And at the end, we'll have a questions and answer session. But like I said, if you have any questions during the event, feel free to send a chat message, and Aldo will be able to answer you. A little bit about our division. We have 340 active members as of a couple days ago. We're a growing division. Being one of the largest countries in the world, it's our activity on IVAO is it's still growing. We're still structuring our division. So they're going to join us and help control during our restructuring. The first contact will be your ARTCC assistant chief, if you have one, depending on where you're interested in controlling. If you don't have assistant chief, then the chief of that ARTCC will be your next contact. And if you don't have a chief there, like for example in Washington D.C. there's no chief, then you would contact me, and if I'm not available, then you would contact Aldo, and that's our simple chain of command. And after him is the assistant director and director. So we follow a nice chain of command here in our division, and it seems to flow. The main website you check out, ivaous.org. You get all your information there about charts, events, just anything you need to know. We're adding a lot of information about every airport, even the minor airports. So whatever airport you're controlling, you get all the information you need on that website. And whatever you can't find there, you go to airnav.com and you get charts, and skyvector.com will have your VFR sectional charts. So bookmark those three websites, ivaous.org, airnav, and skyvector. And also check the forum regularly. Our staff members update the forum, but it doesn't look like we got a lot of members and GCAs checking it out. So you get a lot of useful information there, upcoming events, planning events. You can help us out. Once you get your GCA, you can help join us for events. I'm more than happy to have you there. So, little introduction. The main difference between ICAO and FAA are the following points that I noted here in the presentation. Instead of QNH, we use altimeter, which most of you probably already know. 2909 or 2 is our standard altimeter setting. For taxi instructions, I'm pretty sure in Europe they taxi to holding point. Well, in the US, we give the runway first and then the instructions. So runway 1, taxi via Alpha Bravo Charlie, hold short runway 19er, for example. Also the runways. You might notice doing a flight in the US, we don't have zeros from digits 1 to 9. So it'd just be runway 1 right instead of runway 01 right, for example. Landing clearances, we like to clear people to land, even if they're 4th, 5th, or even 10th in the on final. In Europe, you say continue approach. We just give them a landing clearance, let them sort themselves out. Of course, you give them a number. So like clear to land number 3. We'll talk more about that later. Another important thing to notice is we don't give pushback and startup clearances in the U.S. There's no FAA position. The FAA is not responsible for the terminals or any parking areas. We call these non-movement areas. We'll talk more about them later too. This in the U.S. it's special. The airports have something called a ramp control. These are the ones that handle pushbacks, startups, gate assignments, and so on. So on the network, if you're ground or handling the ground position, never give pushback and startup clearance. So if someone calls up and requests pushback and start, you just push and start at your own discretion. Call me right for taxi. You don't even have to say that. Just say call for taxi. So a lot of people don't know that do fly in the U.S. Also, we don't say radar contact when. I mean, we'll say radar contact when, but as long as it's the first time you're actually radar identifying an aircraft. If you're getting an aircraft handed off to you by another center or approach or departure controller, you don't say radar contact again. So they're only radar identified once. You can say anything like welcome aboard or how you doing, how's the weather. It's anything but radar contact because they already have radar contact. Again, we'll talk more about that later. Another thing I really focus on, and we're getting a lot of them these days, is VFR in the United States. We're getting a lot of VFR aircraft, and ATC is struggling. They don't know what to do, how to handle them. The thing to realize is VFR is much easier than IFR. You don't have to do a lot with VFR. But in order to understand what you do with them, we have to look at airspace classes in the United States. We have Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, and Golf. We don't have Class Foxtrot airspace. So we have A to Golf. The controlled airspaces for IFR are Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo. For VFR, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. VFR is never allowed in Class Alpha. So what's Class Alpha? That's 18,000 feet and above, up to flight level 600. Above flight level 600 is Echo, which we'll talk about in a second. But within this airspace, there's no VFR, no special VFR, nothing, only IFR. That's why the airspace was created. And yeah, you need to be under air traffic control at all times within the airspace. So it's nationwide throughout the U.S., Hawaii, and Alaska, 18,000 and above. Class Bravo, which I'm sure the airports will be like where most of these will be under control, like JFK, Miami, Houston, LA, Chicago, those major airports everyone knows about. These are usually from the surface up to 10,000 feet. A great way to look at the airspace designation is going to skyvector.com, the website I gave earlier, and we'll look at some sectionals. I'll show you how to read those. What Class Bravo looks like is an inverted wedding cake with a blue line, and like I said, these are usually around the busiest airports. This is the only airspace class that VFR needs a specific clearance to enter and operate in. A lot of people confuse that. They think they got to get clearances to other airspaces. No, only in Bravo they have to get clearance to VFR only. Now, keep in mind, I'm talking about VFR. I'm not talking about IFR now. I'm talking about VFR. So, as opposed to like, Class Charlie and Delta, where you don't need to get a specific clearance. You just have to say the aircraft's call sign. And then they're cleared to go through your airspace. So, we'll talk about how to give a VFR clearance later on. Just know what the classes do. Class Charlie, example is Fort Lauderdale, and some somewhat busy airports, but not as busy as our major ones. These are usually up to 4,000 feet, and they're in a magenta red colored circle around a sectional chart. And the only thing VFR needs, like I said, is to call them up. Say Fort Lauderdale Tower, Cessna 48231. We're 5 miles outside of Fort Lauderdale. We're going to pass over the airport. All they have to say, the Fort Lauderdale Tower just has to say the call sign. November 48231, Roger, good afternoon. They can give a squawk if they want. They don't have to. Class Bravo, you always have to give a unique squawk code for the VFR. But what I've noticed, I'm a real life pilot, and I fly around Teterboro a lot. What I've noticed is that, well, that's the next one, Class Delta Airspace. We have Teterboro Airport just inside of New York. What I've noticed is they always get a squawk code if I'm passing through there. I'll call them up. Oh, I'm sorry, my microphone's. I'll call Teterboro Tower up, and I'll just say, hey, I'm going to pass through Teterboro. I'm on my way to Hudson River. They'll give me a squawk code. Then they'll identify me. And then they'll just say, tell me if there's any traffic around. That's all you have to do. Just say radar contact, maintain VFR. That's it. And let the aircraft do what they want. If there's significant traffic you need to tell them about, just tell them about it. Say there's an aircraft 5 miles out your 3 o'clock, Boeing 737 reporting site. Got on the site. Okay, great. So you don't have to do much with VFR. Class Echo is just everything that isn't Class Delta, Charlie, or Bravo, or even Alpha, but it's still controlled airspace for IFR aircraft. and it's usually begins at 12,000 feet and above. VFR aircraft would be under ATC control in Class Echo airspace. So they just have different like weather minimas to enter Class Echo. The Class Echo is just like a faded magenta outline on the sectionals too. And Class Golf is just uncontrolled airspace, even for IFR. So it's just everything that is in the rural areas of the country, uncontrolled airports. IFR will be on that local Unicom for there. Look on the top right here. I talk about squawk codes real quick, which I think most of you should already know. We have the VFR squawk code 1200 and 2000 for IFR. I think everyone knows about. But 1200 is our standard squawk VFR code in the U.S. 7700 and 7600, sometimes you get people doing that. I think it's ridiculous. At IVO, we have emergencies, but it happens. If you ever see 700, don't even give a warning. Report them immediately to a supervisor or to executive. That's what I do because nobody has any reason at all squawking 7500. That means a hijack. I'm from the New York area. I lived through September 11, but still a little sensitive about that. So if you see 7500 squawked anywhere, don't even give a warning. Just immediately write to a supervisor or send an email to executive. That happened to me twice already, and I don't have any tolerance for that. So really keep that in mind. If you look in the bottom, you got like 3 pictures here that I put. This is an example of what we call prohibited airspace. We have the famous White House, green one over there. We have another prohibited airspace, Mount Vernon, where George Washington, his old home was. And we have the Kennedy Space Center. You don't want to be an aircraft flying when a rocket ship takes off. You don't want to be anywhere near that. So prohibited airspace is, you don't fly at all under any circumstances, no exception. If you really want to fly there, like do a Marine One flight, we have a system with the Special Operations Coordinator. Send him an email. Say, I want to do Marine One on this day at this time. This will be my permission. He'll most likely say yes. And otherwise, avoid that airspace. So now we have a couple pictures here of some of our major airports in the United States and the call signs here. If you're going to plan to control any of these airports, try to do some extra research on it because lots of complicated procedures for the major airports, especially the New York, Boston, Miami, and DC areas. Especially the New York areas, the most complex airspace in the world. So AirNav, check out the website for more information. Really research it a lot. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing worse than sounding like an idiot on the radio. I mean, of course, we're training, but at least be prepared to control. I don't have to talk about this a lot because MADARs are very similar. One thing I want to point out is if you look into the top line of the MADAR, that 9SM, if everyone sees that, 9SM, our visibility is measured by statute miles, which are very similar to our miles. Is 5 feet is in 1 mile. So yeah, it's close to that. I think it's 5,000 feet a statute mile. Hue clouds, that's the same. We tell our degrees in Celsius. So in this MADAR, it's 18 degrees Celsius, 2.17 degrees Celsius. And then you see the last line is our altimeter, 2972. What else can I tell you about this page? It might be useful. Okay, RVSM airspace. It looks like every beer is from an RVSM country, so we use the same, reduced vertical separation minima. East is odd levels, west is even. And if you look to the right, this is worth mentioning. We have something called a lowest usable flight level. Our transition altitude in the United States is always 18,000 feet. Our transition flight level is the same, 180. So that means depending on the altimeter setting, an aircraft has a restriction of the lowest usable flight level they can fly. So it's usually 500 feet per 0.50 inches on the altimeter setting. Now, if any of you are taking notes, you don't have to. You can stop taking notes because I made a printout version of this that I'm going to send everybody after the meeting. where you can take notes and use for future reference, such as this chart over here, which can be very useful if you're going to be a center controller. So don't worry, I'll send it out after the meeting. So I want to see if everyone's paying attention here. It's good to see that. Okay, Nasser's back here. Yeah, I saw you dropped out of there. Let's see if you guys are paying attention. Aldo, don't answer this. I want the GCAs to answer this. What is the transition altitude in the United States? 1,000, 19,000, 8,000, 7,500, or it varies? I should have 3 votes here. We'll move on once all 3 of you vote. Don't worry about what other people are voting. Do your best. If you can answer these practice questions, I'm going to ask like maybe 5 or 10 practice questions during the session. If you can answer these correctly, I guarantee 100% you're going to pass the GCA exam. Great, everybody's paying attention. 18,000 feet in the United States. What position controls the ramp? There's none in the US. The ground controls it, delivery, the tower, or the approach. Controlling the ramp, meaning giving pushback startup clearance, assigning them a terminal, assigning them a gate. Okay, we got one more vote. One person. Okay, this happens a lot, don't worry. I always see a certain percentage voting for ground here. But don't worry, we're here to learn, so I'll explain again. The ground position does not control the ramp in the United States. There actually isn't any position, ATC position, that controls the ramp or parking. This is done by airport operations, ramp control. You know, the FAA has no jurisdiction over these non-movement areas. Don't worry, we're going to talk about it again in a little bit more specific. Let's see, let me give you one more question. All right, what airspace class requires a specific clearance for VFR aircraft? A specific clearance, meaning they must be told they're cleared into that airspace. Is it Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, or Echo? One more vote. Oh yeah, don't worry, I can't see what anybody's voting. All right, Class Delta is wrong actually. The correct answer is Class Bravo. Class Delta, I don't think I talked much about Class Delta. It's controlled airspace, but it's for those very minor but somewhat busy airports, like Teterboro, Tango Echo Bravo in the New York area. This is controlled. It's usually a part-time controlled by a tower. And a VFR aircraft does not need specific clearance to enter that. They just need to hear their call sign being read by the controller, and then they can enter the airspace. Class Bravo is the only airspace where they need specific clearance to enter the controlled area. Let's see. All right, that's enough questions for now. Let's get back to the page. Is that if anyone has? Well, I did already. One sec, bear with me. If you have any questions at all, just ask in the chat. Good. Here we go again. Let me get back here. Okay. So we're going to focus now a lot on delivery. We have, excuse me, we have something called departure procedures in the U.S., similar to the SIDS, Standard Instrument Departures. Also, one thing to notice is we don't require the pilots to file a departure procedure, or we don't assign it either. This is up to the pilot. If the pilot wants, they can file their departure procedure. If they don't, then they'll just get vectors after departure. So if a pilot files a departure procedure, you clear them on the departure, and you let them fly the departure. If they don't file it, then you say expect vectors to their certain waypoint. We'll look at some examples soon. I'm sorry, what my voice is still out. What's going on here? Nobody can hear me. All right. I could turn up my volume more, my output, but I think it's at maximum already. So, all right. All right. So let's talk about exit points, right? So every airport in the United States, Class Bravo, Charlie, and Delta airports, they're going to have exit points. What this is the first waypoint that an aircraft has to file to leave the airport. You can find these exit waypoints either on the airport's departure procedure, or we're adding them on our website. So just look on your ARTCC page, open the airport, and you'll see a list of the valid waypoints that the aircraft must file to leave the airport. If they don't have any of those intersections filed, then you got to correct their flight plan. Excuse me, you got to correct their flight plan and give them one of those waypoints. So that at least is you have to do. If they don't file a departure procedure, that's fine. They at least have to have a valid exit point. And if they are filing a departure procedure, chances are they're going to have the right waypoint, because you'll see the valid exit points in the departure procedure. Now, to the phraseology, we use an acronym called CRAFT, C-R-A-F-T. Each one of these letters stands for something. The clearance delivery is like artwork in the United States. So, you got to really look at the structure of the clearance. The first part is the clearance limit. Clear them to the airport. If the airport's really congested and the controller requests to clear them to a nav aid or a holding pattern, you're going to do that too. It's just, the first part's the clearance limit. Cleared to Los Angeles Airport, right? That's the C part. The R part is the route, via. So this is similar to Europe, right? You're cleared to wherever, via. Now this is where you enter your departure procedure, your via radar vectors if they didn't file departure procedure, any additional instructions such as climbs, which a climb is a additional obstacle clearance in within the departure procedure. The only one that uses climbs now is really JFK and LaGuardia and Newark in the New York area. I haven't heard of any other airport using climbs. We'll talk about climbs later, really briefly. Or any transitions if they're on RNAV departure, you're going to provide them the transition too. So the C and the R, you kind of group together. You're cleared to Los Angeles Airport via the Kennedy 1 departure, radar vectors to COAT, and then as filed. So that's your C and your R. Your A is your altitude. Most likely initial altitude in most U.S. airports is around 5,000 feet. Some have 10,000, some have 2,500. But the standard that I've seen is usually 5,000. You can find this again on airnav.com on the departure charts. And the phraseology is maintain. So we just say maintain 5,000. We don't say climb initially. We say maintain 5,000. Expect flight level at a certain amount of minutes after departure. Most of the time it's 10 minutes, but we don't say 10. We say 10 or 15 for 15. So this depends on how high they're going, your congestion, your traffic. Normally during events, maybe you're going to clear them to their final flight level later, so you can expect final flight level 15 minutes after departure. So the whole A part will be like maintain 5,000, expect flight level 290, 10 minutes after departure. The next is the F, the frequency, departure frequency. We have a lot of different approach departure controllers at congested airports. Or, on IBAO, sometimes we might not have a departure controller. Maybe approach will be handling the departure, or the center will be handling the departure. So you got to specify the departure frequency. That way, when they take off, there's less to tell them when they take off. Because, as a tower controller, as soon as they get airborne, you want to get them off your frequency and get them to the departure controller as soon as possible. So you want to say the least amount of instructions when they get airborne. You just want to say, American 123, contact departure, good day. So they already have the departure frequency and the clearance when we're not as rushed. So that's the purpose of including the frequency in the clearance. Of course, if your tower and departure approach or center is not online, then you just say departure frequency on Unicom or departure frequency on 122.8. Transponder is your squawk code. Just like everywhere else in the world, we end the clearance with a squawk code. With squawks, usually VFR squawks begin with 03, and usually IFR squawk codes begin with 1 begin with 1 and above, or like 1.5, sorry, 1.5 and above. I know Kennedy uses a lot of 1.5, like 1.501 or something. So that's your craft. It's a lot to take in, and it's going to take some practice. And as Aldo pointed out in the chat, you can have some audio samples there. Listen to liveatc.net on the delivery frequencies. Here are some examples of different types of flight plans that you can expect to see. I use Kennedy because I'm also the New York chief and I know this airport the best. It's also the most complicated. So just bear with me here. So the first part, we have a departure procedure with a climb. So in Kennedy, if you look at the Kennedy 1 departure chart, there's something called climbs from runway 31. This means is that, okay, you're taking off runway 31, the direction is going right into Manhattan, the skyscrapers, right, in downtown Manhattan, and you're cutting into LaGuardia's airspace. So what the climb does is it turns you away from that mess, away from that congestion, or to clear any obstacles. So it's additional instructions from taking off from a certain runway. Like I said, Kennedy is, and New York, one of the only airports areas that I've seen climbs used, and I think they're trying to do away with them. But it's really important to know the most common climb in Kennedy is the Canarsie climb, because after departure you're going to turn left direct Canarsie, which is in the middle of the ocean, middle of the water. Okay, for an example, phraseology would be with this flight plan that they file JFK1 is the Kennedy 1 departure, but you won't see the climb in there. You have to look at the chart for the actual climb, or look on our website. I kind of condensed it to make it easier. So JetBlue 1004, cleared to Boston Airport via the Kennedy 1 departure, Canarsie climb, radar vectors to Merritt, and then as filed. Maintain 5,000, expect flight level 21010 minutes after departure. Departure frequency is with me, squawk 1501. That's your whole entire clearance. What a mouthful, huh? I mean, look how, it's crazy. It's artwork, like I said, our clearances in the U.S. compared to European clearances. And you know what? It's unfair because in busy times, the aircraft only has to read back the squawk code. So the aircraft only has to say JetBlue 1004, squawk 1501. So, like, hey, man, what's the matter with you? I just read this whole long clearance and you're just going to say the squawk code? What's the matter, right? But it is what it is. So, not an IVAO, unless it's an event, chances are they're going to read back the whole clearance. Pray that they don't ask you to type it out. If I get a text pilot saying, can you type out the clearance? I'll be like, no, listen up. I'm not typing this long. All right, so the next is the radar vector departure, when they file no departure procedure. This is probably the easiest one. And this is the most common too. So thankfully on IVAO, we get a lot of European pilots that don't realize that they have to file their own departure procedure. So yeah, in this example, it would just be JetBlue 1004, you clear to Boston Airport via radar vectors to Merritt. The rest is the same as in, the first example. So you kind of cross out Kennedy 1 departure, Canarsie climb, or any other instructions. It's just radar vectors to your first waypoint. But like I said, make sure they file the first waypoint. The first waypoint is correct. So that one's easy. The next one is the RNAV departure procedure, and usually RNAV departures come with transitions. They don't come with climbs. They don't come with radar vectors, because an RNAV departure, the pilot is going to fly everything according to their instruments, according to the most likely their FMC. So they don't need your vectors. So instead, you give them a transition. The transition depends on which direction they're going. So the example I provided, we have exec jet 31. They're going to fly from Kennedy to Trenton, short flight at 8,000 feet, and they're going to fly with a score 3 departure. And their transition is Ranger. If you notice on a score 3 chart, there's two transitions. There's the Ranger transition and the Yankee transition. The Ranger is going, west towards Trenton. So that's the best transition for them. So the clearance would be exec jet 31, cleared to Trenton Airport by the score 3 departure, Ranger transition, then as filed. Everything else is the same. Don't worry if it's not going to take them 10 minutes to get to 8,000 feet. You're still going to say expect 8,010 minutes after departure. might clear them, obviously might clear them up to 8,000 much earlier, but that's just our standard thing we say. The last is the most complicated, a departure procedure with a climb and with a transition. So remember, an RNAV departure gets a transition but never gets radar vectors. A non-RNAV departure can get vectors, can get a transition, and can get a climb. These are the three things, maximum three things that you can add on to a clearance: a climb, a transition, and radar vectors. So transitions usually happen with, like for example, New York area, going across the ocean. We have the Merritt 3, the Grecky 3, the Happy 3, and the Betty 3. These three departures procedures all go on NATS across the ocean. And you can see in this example clearance, right in the middle, after Vixen and before Logu, you see NATR. That's the Nat Track Romeo. So this is a valid, they were right to file the Merritt 3 departure in here. So the transition, you just have to know the transition. You got to study the departure procedures, whatever airport you're controlling. The transition for this one will be Papa Uniform Tango, Putnam VOR, not Hotel Foxtrot Delta. See how confusing that could be? So the whole entire clearance, let's just say too, the aircraft is going to take off from runway 31 left at Kennedy. So we're going to add a climb into it. So now the whole entire clearance will be Virgin 10, cleared to London Heathrow Airport by the Merritt 3 departure, NRC climb, radar vectors to Merritt, Putnam transition, then as filed. Maintain 5,000, expect flight level 330 1 0 minutes after departure, departure frequency on 135.9 or squawk 1507. What a mouthful, huh? So let's focus on the root, the R of the craft, right? We have the Merritt 3 departure. So you first give the departure clearance. That's the first thing you always give in the R, the Merritt 3 departure. The second part will be the climb. The third part will be the vectors, and the final part of the clearance will be the transition. So just remember that. When you're given a clearance, did he file a departure procedure? Yes. Is he going to have a climb? No. Okay. Radar vectors. Where's his next waypoint? Merritt? Okay. And what's the transition if there is any? So just go in that order. Okay. So the last few clearances I told you before, we talk about the FAR clearance in the Bravo airspace. It's very similar. We also use the craft, just like in IFR clearances. So the clearance limit, first call sign Cessna 7 X-ray Romeo. You're cleared into the New York class Bravo airspace, and your route is going to be VFR, right? He doesn't need a route. He's going to be VFR. He does his own navigation. So maintain VFR and your altitude at or below 2,500, and departure frequency and squawk are the same. So remember to say maintain VFR and look at the weather. The clouds could be less than 2,500, and you don't want to clear them, into a cloud. So you can say maintain VFR at or below 1,000 feet, 1,500. Obviously, the minimum, if the clouds are below 500, forget about flying VFR. The guy shouldn't be flying VFR. So you could say, if you want to be really professional, you can say something like, whether it's below VMC conditions, VFR clearance unavailable. But you know what? Let them have his fun. Fly in the cloud if they want. It's IVAO. Next is helicopter clearances. They work just like VFR. Don't be afraid of helicopters. They're just as easy as fixed wing VFR. So they get the same clearance. Chopper 82 Bravo Charlie. You're cleared into New York class Bravo airspace. Maintain VFR at or below 2,500. Departure frequency 119.1. Squawk 0302. Like I said, I'm going to give you printouts. I'll give you a Word document with some examples of phraseology to reference. So this should not be a problem with these. Just really focus on them and study these clearances. It's the most important part of the GCA job. So you can take a deep breath now. We got through the hardest part of the class. These are some example charts that you will find on airnav.com. These are FAA charts. And the one on the left is the Kennedy departure. If you look on the bottom of the chart, you see the climbs. You got the Breezy Point climb, Bridge climb, Canarsie climb, and Idlewild climb, and it just gives you different instructions. If you look at what I did on the New York ARTC website, I really simplified the climbs to make it much easier to read than the charts. So if you're going to control in Kennedy, you can check out our website. It's useful information there. The middle chart is the score 3 departure. So you can see an example of the Yankee and the Ranger transition. If you look at the bottom of the chart, you see Rangers on the left, Yankees on the right. So that's an example of transition. Which direction do they go to after score? Because you see where the departure procedure splits up. And then after when they get to Ranger or Yankee, they still don't need vectors because they're going to be intercepting their airway by then. So you don't need to give them vectors with the RNAV departures. And the one on the right is an example of the Mera 3 departure. You have your climbs again, and yeah, on the bottom you have your transition instructions. This I got from SkyVector. If you go to skyvector.com, and on the top left of the map, you type airport you want to look at. It'll bring you to the airport chart, and charts you can view. The en route charts, high airways, en route charts, low airways. TAC is specific, more detailed in maps of specific areas, such as New York, Baltimore, Philadelphia. And then what I like to use the New York heli, or just the heli charts for these airports, because they're the most detailed maps for VFR aircraft. And you can see these blue lines are the helicopter routes. Again, New York, the most complicated airspace. Not other areas are as complex as this with the helicopter routes. Oh yeah, I know what I need to show you guys on this chart. Okay, so look on the bottom left, right above Staten Island. The label Staten Island. You see a kind of like a fraction, 70, and a line plus 0.5. This is the altitude range of the controlled airspace. In this situation, it's controlled Bravo airspace because of the blue line. So it's above 500 feet, but below 7,000. So if you're VFR and you're flying above 7,000 feet, you don't need to contact air traffic control. You're out of their airspace in that little ring area. Or if you're below 500, which you shouldn't be below 500, that's illegal. You get a fine from the FAA, but you don't need to be under air traffic control. Let's talk about ground real quick. As I mentioned before, there's no pushback and startup clearances. Ground not handle non-movement areas, only movement areas. So what is a non-movement area and a movement area? Non-movement areas are ramps, gates, terminals, parking areas, and cargo ramps. And the movement areas are taxiways, like the yellow lines on Flight Simulator. If you do a flight on FSX or FS9, you see those yellow lines. Those are there in real life too. And those are the movement areas. And the non-movement areas are, just like I said, the parking assignments, the gates, the ramps, and so on. The ground will issue clearance to cross over active runways with the permission of the tower if the tower is online. You can communicate with the tower through private chat or through our TeamSpeak channel. However, runways that aren't active, you don't need to bother tower for. You can give them clearance as a ground controller. It's only the active runways that you need specific clearance from the tower, but you can relay that clearance to the aircraft. But note that not all taxiways are controlled by the ground in the US. There are some taxiways that the tower owns too, usually between parallel runways. We'll look at a ground map next, or in a couple slides. There'll be a ground map of Newark, which is a perfect example of what the tower owns. Helicopters, we don't get a lot of them on IVO, but if they do decide to fly, be prepared. Give them a surface taxi or air taxi or even hover taxi. And it's the same. If you're not sure, just give an air taxi. It's the same instructions as a normal fixed wing aircraft. You just add air taxi before it. If you want to read up a surface and hover taxi later, check out this slide. Here's Miami. This is port. This is better than me, but I'm gonna do my best with some examples here. If you look at this chart and you see these HS circles, these orange HS are called hotspots. Hotspot 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on Miami. These are really congested areas, and areas where ground really needs to pay close attention to, not to fill up those hot spots with so much traffic. You can have an accident or something. And also, give waypoints. So just take, if you're going to be ground, pay special attention to those hot spots. When you give taxi instructions, as I said before, give the destination first, then the instructions, and then crossing instructions. So American 318, runway 8 right at Mike 1, taxi via Yankee 2, Yankee Papa. So you see, you gave 8 right at Mike 1, because you can also give 8 right at Mike 2 if the aircraft doesn't need full length in different other intersections. So if you look at hotspot 5, you see where Mike 1 is. So your total destination is runway 8 right at Mike 1, and then you give the instructions. Another one, JetBlue 211, he's landing. So say JetBlue 211, welcome to Miami. Always give him a welcome. If you fly a lot, it's nice to hear welcome to wherever you just landed. Welcome to Miami. The ramp via Mike 10, November. Destination first. You said ramp. Just taxi to the ramp. I don't care what park you go to. That's not my problem. Contact airport control. Find your own gate. It's not my issue. Just taxi to the ramp via Mike 10 in November. Get off my movement areas. That goal. You want to get them off the movement areas so you can deal with other aircraft. And that's probably the last transition you're going to say to an arriving aircraft. So you can tell them, for example, frequency change approved, or you just say, have a nice day. Yeah, obviously, if you're busy and you think, you're going to have to give them a hold short position, keep them on your frequency. One thing I can't stand is when they call you up on the blocks. Like, hey, we're on the blocks. Okay, fine. Good night. Have a nice day. But they don't have to do that. Helicopters, air taxi, runway 8 right. That's it. So just add air at the beginning. That's ground. Almost done with the cab. Let's talk about tower. We'll do some practice questions, and we'll finish up the meeting. So with tower, it's your job to assign the runway. You have the final say of which runway is in use. But, we have an SOP on how to assign the proper runways. So at least refer to that. Landing clearances, we give the winds first, the runway, and the clearance, and additional instructions. So wind 220, 12 gusting 17, runway 22 left, clear to land. Number 3 behind a Boeing 747. You don't have to say Boeing 747, you can say 747. It's the name of the aircraft. And notice how I said number 3. So there's still 2 people that haven't landed yet, and he's following them, but I still gave him landing clearance. That's messed up, right? I'm sure you South Americans, Europeans are wondering why you clearing him to land, right? Well, in the U.S., we give landing clearance no matter how far behind there. The number 7, you're cleared to land. We never say continue approach. Don't ever say that. In the event that the guy in front of him has not cleared the runway in time, you just give him a go around. And the go around voids the landing clearance. So you just say, and tell him why he's got to go around. Let's see, what's this called? Fine. American 123, traffic is on the runway, go around. Or American 123, we have a bunch of birds, hanging out on the runway, go around. Or, whatever the problem is. Line up and wait. We started using that about a little over a year ago. We used to say position and hold. Now we say line up and wait. And we have lassos. Lassos are fun. Land and hold short operations. The lasso points, you'll see that on the next slide. I have a map. Lassos are used when the aircraft lands and holds short a certain position before another active runway to give way to another departing or arriving aircraft. They're a bit challenging because you have to try stopping for the lasso point, otherwise you can collide with the other aircraft. But they are used very commonly in a lot of airports in the Midwest, like Minneapolis and Chicago. They use them. Missed approach. You can say different things. Just a simple go around, contact departure, or fly publish missed approach. Or you can give them every airport that we have in the U.S. that we're adding onto our ARTCC sites. I am putting the missed approach headings and altitudes to climb. So you can just say go around, climb, maintain 3,000, my heading 170, and then contact departure. Simple stuff. Tower is very, very easy. check out this map. This is Newark. Remember, I was telling you this before. The taxiways are sometimes controlled by tower. The taxiways in this situation between runways 4 left and 4 right, parallels, these are all controlled by tower. Ground has no control over these taxiways. And a general rule: 2 minutes between puffs, especially if you have heavies. If you have propellers, you don't have to worry about that. But chances are you're gonna have a lot of heavy 747s. 747s, I would wait about 3 minutes for the wake turbulence to clear. The general rule is 2 minutes between takeoffs. Separation rules: you want to try keeping them, 4 nautical miles away from each other, 5 to 7 for with small aircraft behind heavies. You don't want to give them a lot of turbulence. Side steps. This is a special thing we have in the U.S. They're not allowed for runways more than 1,200 feet apart. In this situation, Newark is the runways are 400 feet apart, so we can do a side step at Newark. And aircrafts are on final, runway 4 right. 4 left is wide open, but he's landing on 4 right, and some guy is still taking off, right? He's not going to make it in time. The tower can tell him sidestep runway 4 left. The aircraft will just go onto 4 left and he'll land. So it can be very useful during events and you have some congestion, or even new pilots that are slow on the ground. Circle to land, you really have to worry if you're going to be approach control about circle to land. But for example, here we have a circle to land procedure runway 29er, but you line up with the ILS approach runway 22 left. So the approach controller is going to clear you on the ILS approach 22 left, circle to land 29er. Once you're established on the ILS, you'll go to tower, and tower will say, let's give you a landing clearance for 29er. We won't even worry about you on 22 left. You don't even have to say circle to land. You just say wind calm on 29er, approach to land. The aircraft through the circle. That's a real cool approach, by the way. Circle land 29er at Newark. You cut really close to the towers in downtown Manhattan, and really cool. Tower's an easy position, but keep in mind if delivery and ground aren't online, you're running the whole show at the airport. So you gotta be on your feet here. You gotta get the clearance delivery, you gotta get the taxi, and you have to get takeoff. So chances are you're going to that's going to happen a lot. Take on tower. So I mainly have a slide from newbies because everybody, if you're at least a C1 or aerodrome controller rating, you should know about this. VFR traffic patterns, we got them 2 in the US. You probably tested them. 45-degree entry into the downwind, 45-degree departure from the crosswind. That's the best way for the VFR aircraft to exit. My mic, why is it keep... No. How am I? Am I back yet? All right. Helicopters, same thing. They have movement areas, non-movement areas. The movement areas are helipads, runways, and even parking areas. Sometimes could be, helicopter-specific parking areas could be movement areas, such as hospitals, stadiums, rooftops, even police stations, not inside of the tower. You'll say landing, report landing assured, and you gotta tell them landing will be at your own risk. So the whole phraseology be winds at, let's say they're gonna land on 32nd Street in Manhattan, right? And you're LaGuardia Tower. You would say the wind at LaGuardia calm, landing will be at your own risk at 32nd Street. Use caution. Report landing assured. The guy will call you landing assured. Just say Roger, thanks. So he's safe. And then the same thing with if they're departing. The wind's calm, wind at LaGuardia calm, takeoff will be at your own risk. Use caution, report airborne. You don't get a lot of helicopters, so that's all right. Approach, we'll answer some questions and we'll finish up. We love IMS in the US. We use something called PTAC, position, turn, altitude clearance, for giving ILS clearances. So when clearing an ILS approach for an aircraft, we use PTAC. The P for position, you tell them how many miles they are from the 12-mile approach fix. The T is the turn you give, usually a 30-degree intercept turn to intercept the localizer. A is the altitude, how high they're going to be until they get established. You know, you don't want them descending while they're trying to be established. They could hit a tower or an obstacle. You want to be established first, catch the glide slope, descend with the glide slope. So how high they're going to be until all that happens. And the C, the clearance. Then you finally give the clearance. You don't have to tell them report established. You can see that on your radar scope. You can see when they're established. Most of the time, you know, just IVA will have it. They're going to call you up and tell you they're established anyway. And then when they do, you hand them off the tower or you give them clearance to land if the tower's not online. So an example, United 2 Heavy, 9 miles from Aaron. That's the 12-mile approach fix for runway 22 left at Newark. So 9 miles from Aaron, turn left heading 190, to intercept the localizer, maintain 2,500 till established, cleared ILS 22 left approach, or cleared ILS approach 22 left. They tend to say ILS 22 left and then the approach, like they tend to say the runway and then the approach first. I've noticed on live ATC, but really doesn't matter. You get your message across. Visual approaches, you have to confirm the airport is in sight for the aircraft. So give them a call up, say United 23 Heavy, the airfield is 10 miles after 3 o'clock, report it in sight. They'll say United 2, we got it in sight. Then you can clear them to visual approach. That's the easiest. I love visual approaches because you don't have to do anything. You say United 23 Heavy, you clear visual approach, runway 22 left. Let them get on final, let them do what they got to do, and then clear them to land. Also keep in mind, I stress this with the newbies, but I'll just mention it now. You have to give an approach clearance for IFR aircraft and a landing clearance. These are not the same. So visual approach does not give him clearance to land, but you still have to get, and landing clearance does not give him clearance for the approach for an IFR aircraft. So keep that in mind. You need to give the visual approach and the landing clearance. If they're on short final already, they got the runway in sight, and you still haven't cleared them on the visual approach, you can give them the approach clearance and landing clearance all at once if tower is not online. So United 23 Heavy, you clear visual approach, runway 22 left, winds calm, runway 22 left, clear to land. Let's answer some questions. It's already been an hour. We started a little late, so I think we got about 15 minutes left of the meeting. And, I'll give you additional instructions what to do next. Let's answer some questions, 3 or 4 questions here. So I got 3 GCA applicants here. I want to answer. How do you say the CTR call sign on the radio? Is it radar, control, center, ACC, or none of the above? So you see, for example, KZNY_CTR. Is he New York radar? New York. Okay, you guys know this. New York center. That's correct. There we go. What is the acronym we use for clearance deliveries? Is it PTAC, CTAC, CRAFT, CAFT, or none? You know the acronym. What would you use? Oh, come on, a 4th vote. Who's voting for? Come on. I know you staff members know this. But yeah, the correct answer is CRAFT. Clearance, route, altitude, frequency, and transponder. Answer like 2 more questions here. Let's talk a little bit about ground. Which of the following is the correct phraseology? Remember the structure of giving taxi clearances. So take a look at all these and choose what you think is the best. And remember, they're going to be holding short for another runway. So make sure that's in the right position too. Okay, we got 1 vote. We need 2 more here. Okay, 1 more vote. Okay, 3 different answers. Wow, this is crazy. Okay. Let's see which one's right. Like I said, I can't see who voted here, so don't be ashamed if you're wrong. I'm going to choose the correct answer right now, too. There we go. Runway 28, taxi via Alpha November, hold short runway 1. That's the correct answer. Remember, you give the runway first, the destination first, where they're going first. Then you give the instructions, and then the hold short instructions. So destination, taxiways, hold short. Remember that structure. The first one, yeah, you can argue, say, but that's what I said. I said taxi to runway 28. That's right. No, You just say the runway. You don't say taxi to. I think that's my fault. I don't think I mentioned that before, so I'm not going to blame you. The one that the last person voted, runway 28, hold short 01, taxi by Alpha November. There's two things wrong with that. One, we don't say 01 for runways. We just say runway 1. Another thing, hold short should be at the end, not at the beginning. Or not in the middle. So just keep that in mind. One more. Okay, how about this one? CTR should always say radar contact when receiving a handoff from approach. I said CTR, I meant center. The center controller, he should always say radar contact when receiving a handoff from an approach controller. Is this true or false? Like American 123, radar contact, if he got his handoff from an approach controller. 2 people say false, 3 people say false. Everybody is correct. That's awesome. Last question. PTAC is an acronym for what? Is it for clearance delivery, is it for approach clearance, or is it for a landing clearance? Remember, position is the first one. A P is usually position, right? T could either stand for transponder or turn. Landing clearance. Sorry, that's wrong. The correct answer is approach clearance. I see one guy put landing clearance. Remember, we got a difference between approach clearance and landing clearance. Landing clearance, we don't need an acronym for it because it's the standard international clearance. So you give your winds, clearance to land, and or you give your winds, the runway, and your clearance. PTAC has been more complicated because you're clearing them on the approach. So remember, that stands for position, turn, your 30-degree turn, your altitude, and your clearance. So see America 123, you're 9 miles from ZULab. Maintain 2,000. I'm sorry, let's try that again. Yeah, ZULab. Yes. I'm looking at Kennedy here. 12 from ZULab, turn right heading 010 to intercept the localizer. Maintain 2,500 till established. Cleared ILS 4 right approach. Sorry, I did that all. But you get the idea. See what I did? I did it all from memory, but I used the PTAC acronym. So even for more experienced controllers, we still use these acronyms. Don't be ashamed. Really, let's finish this up. Of course it had. Radio and handoffs. These are going to be easy. Everybody knows this. If you don't know this, I'm sorry, you don't deserve an ADC rating. Radio telephony. Everybody should know these, how to speak on a radio too. This is what I want to talk about. Call signs. In the United States, I don't want to hear, like look at the last example, 2711. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear American 2711. I never want to hear that. I'm going to freak out if I hear that on the radio, okay? It should be American 2711. But why? How do we make that structure? So a standard ICAO call sign will be 3 letters, right? For the airline. And a maximum of 4 numbers afterwards. It could be 1, 2, 3, or 4 numbers after that. If it's 1 number, you just say that number, American 5, right? If it's 2 numbers, still say the whole number. American 48, American 49er. Sorry, not you. That's my mistake. You don't say 9er. American 48, 49, American 90, American 50, American 51, and so on. Now, when you have 3 numbers, you break it down. You say the first number, and then you say the last 2 numbers together. So in this situation, we have American 328, American 529, American 521, American 901, American 902. We say O instead of 0 too when we group the letters together. American 905, 907, so on. Something you're just going to pick up. And then the last situation where we have 4 numbers, we group those 2 together, 2711, 9111, 9222. The time we'll say 9er is when the number is grouped alone, so American 9er. But if it's 19, just you say American 19. If they have a couple zeros before their call sign, like a lot of European call signs are structured like that. For example, Air France 001, we just say Air France 1. Or, Lufthansa 017, we just say Lufthansa 17. We omit that any zeros that appear first. I'm sorry. Oh, I just looked at the chat now. I faded away. Am I back yet, or what's going on? Everyone can hear me? Oh, geez. I don't know how long I've been out for. Okay. Heavy and super. We say that at the end of every single call sign. That's actually a heavy or a super. Super is just the A380. That's the only aircraft that gets a super call sign because that thing is huge. But like 747s, they'll have an H designation in their flight plan. Always say heavy at the end of every single transmission. So American 123 heavy. In Europe, what I'm trying to get at is in Europe, you just heavy after the first transmission, and you omit the heavy after every other transmission. In the U.S., it's part of its call sign. It never leaves its call sign. You always say heavy. On the right here, we have common American airliners. Self-explanatory chart here. What I want to focus on is the bottom one for UPS. We actually say UPS, like the English letters. So UPS 23, for example, would be the call sign. Don't say Uniform Papa Sierra. That's just ridiculous. Don't ever do that. Oh, another thing to notice is Continental Airlines, American West. These two airlines have been bought by other airlines. So if you say CAWE, that call sign is Cactus. I'm sorry, other way around. American West was bought by U.S. Airways, but their call sign is Cactus now. So if you see US anywhere for US Airways, that call sign's Cactus. COA for Continental, that's called United now. So if you see COA everywhere, anywhere, just call them United. Continental does not exist anymore. Handoffs, I think it's the last thing. Yeah, this is the last slide. Handoffs, you're going from delivery to ground. It takes place after the aircraft responds or rebacks the clearance that you gave him. And what delivery will give them is the current information or the altimeter if you don't have any ATIS information, which runway's in use, and then hand them off to ground. With Delta 32, you read back information: Bravo current, runway 4 left in use, contact ground point 9er. Good day. That's another thing I want to point out. Ground, if you just say contact ground, that's 121. The most common ground frequency in the United States is 121. So we don't usually say contact ground on 121.9er. We just say ground point 9er. So if you really want to sound American, that's what you want to say. There's nothing wrong with saying contact ground on 121.9er. If you think the guy's an idiot and you won't get it, then you just just tell him the frequency. It's not a big deal. But if you really want to sound realistic, then say contact ground point 9er. Another thing, we don't say decimal. Don't ever, ever, ever say decimal. I don't want to hear decimal at all. I'm going to suspend you if you say decimal. No, I'm kidding. But don't say decimal. It's always point. So contact ground point 9er is what you want to say. Going from ground to tower is ground point 9er happens usually toward holding point, but the ground does not even have to give them a frequency change clearance. On IVAO, because it's a training situation, we like to do that. So Delta 32 contact tower, a 118.3, good day. As they're getting closer to the holding point, you can do that. But the pilot leaves your frequency and just goes to the tower when he gets closer to the runway. Don't be offended. He's being professional. He doesn't have to tell you he's going. Ground, you did your job. He's going to tower now. But, it happens. Tower to departure, as I said before, as soon as the aircraft's airborne, you want to say the least amount, you want to take up the least amount of radio time as you can. You want to get him over to the departure, center, or approach, whoever he's contacting as soon as possible. He might have a short initial climb, right? Maybe his initial climb is 2,500 as it is from Newark Airport. He'll get to 2,500 within 2 seconds. You want to get him right over to the departure controller so you can get higher clearance, because no 757 or 747 even wants to hang out at 2,500. So you want to ensure them, if you're a departure controller, you want to ensure them a nice smooth climb. but as an ADC controller, you should probably be aware of that. Tower to Unicom. Say, for example, there's no departure center approach controller online handling your airport. So you're just going to have them, switch to Unicom, but you're not going to say this word Unicom. Keep this in mind. Very rarely you're going to say the word Unicom. The only time you'll say Unicom is in the departure clearance. Departure frequency is on Unicom. But when you're giving a handoff, never say Unicom, because the pilot can go to another frequency. So in this case, we say frequency change to advisory approved, meaning he can leave your frequency now. But you can go to, for example, in the United States, we have 123.45. This is a chat radio. I mean, people are telling their life stories on there. It's like the voice Unicom on IVAO. You hear a bunch of attacks, going on and on about, their drama and their problems. We have that here in the U.S. too, in the real world. I'm serious. I do a flight and I'm on 123.45, and the guy's like complaining about, his job and everything. It's like, okay, big deal, but he can do that. So that's what I mean by frequency change approved. It's not just 122.8. There's many different frequencies they can go to if there's no air traffic control. Tower to ground. That's obvious. The aircraft turns off the runway. You don't control that taxiway. Hand them over to ground. In a situation with Kennedy Airport where the aircraft might be landing on 22 left or 4 right, he'll be vacating onto your taxiways. You just give him the instructions, and you can hand them off. Say American 123, cross, welcome to Kennedy. Cross 4 left at Foxtrot. Contact ground on the other side, 0.9er. See you next time. Or 0.7, I should say, at Kennedy. Radar to radar. We already talked about that. You don't say radar contact. Everybody's up to speed with that. It's just a simple handoff. United 17 Heavy, contact New York Center, 128.5. Good day. And radar to Unicom works the same as the tower. Frequency change to advisory approved, except since you have radar contact with him, you have to advise him that his radar services are terminated. You no longer have radar contact with him. Meaning, so he's aware nobody's watching and nobody knows how high he is or what direction he's going. If that aircraft is expecting it. It's just a purpose for saying radar services terminated. If you have them on radar and they're going into either they're going to VFR, they cancel their IFR flight plan, or if they're landing at a ground airport, you would say squawk VFR. So United 17 Heavy, leaving controlled airspace, radar services terminated, frequency change to advisory approved, squawk VFR, good day. So just add that squawk VFR at the end. All right, so that was the presentation. Before we talk about this, I just want to ask a couple more questions, because a couple times you had some incorrect responses. So I want everybody here to pass. Okay, to say we have 100% pass rate with this presentation, so nobody messed it up. Okay. So please tell me, how would I say this call sign? DAL4291. How do I say this call sign? Do I say Delta Alpha Lima 42901, Delta 42901, Delta 4291, Delta 4291, or Delta Alpha Lima 4291? Oh man, where did Ferris go? He got disconnected there. I hope he didn't leave because the presentation's not really over. He's not gonna know how to take the exams now. Oh well, we'll worry about that later. Correct, Delta 291, everyone's paying attention. All right, last question here. What do you think of this lesson? Say, I learned a lot, thanks. I have a few more questions. It was boring, but I learned a lot. It was hard to understand, or I didn't understand shit. Please be honest. Remember, I can't see your responses. Okay, now you guys are lying. You learned a lot, really? No, okay. Hey, Ferris, welcome back. You learned a lot? Good. Thanks. Last question, I promise. Where are you guys from? Go on. Where's your continental pride here? Africa, Asia, South America, Central America. That's awesome. What a diverse variety. Glad to have you guys on board. Okay. Let's close up this meeting, show you the next steps. I'm pretty sure that everybody here can pass. So this is what you guys have to do. This is a long link here. So, but I'm going to send you the presentation anyway. But if it's too much of a long link to copy, go to ibaus.org/academy. Make sure you register with the email address that you contacted me with. You know, the time that you sent me an email saying, sign me up for this event, that we were going to have on file. So your exams are waiting for you. Register that email and you should see your exams. Everybody here is from a non-English speaking country. Looks like we got Tunisia, Brazil, and what's the other guy from? Kuwait. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to have everybody take an English proficiency check too. I think your exams there are waiting for you. It's not that hard. Simple English exam. We just get a lot of people from, Spanish-speaking countries and Brazil even. You know, they they tend to speak Spanish or Brazilian on the radio. We don't like that. Never ever speak another language besides English on the radio, even if it's your best friend, even if it's just used to online. Don't speak anything besides English. It's the United States. Always respect this. If I'm gonna control in Brazil, I'm gonna take an effort and learn Brazilian language to go there. So, take FAA proficiency check. Sorry, FAA proficiency check. If you can, if you answered correctly all the questions that I asked this exam, you should be able to pass the exam. Now, if you fail the FAA proficiency exam, don't worry about it. It's not the end of the world. Me or somebody from training department will work with you. We'll work one-on-one, so you're able to pass it the next time. We'll give it like 7 days waiting period. You pass it the next time, then you'll be good to go. If you fail the English check, I don't know what to do with you. We had one person fail the English check, and I just left it to the training department to decide. So please don't fail that English test. But if you're able to understand everything in this exam, you'll be good to go for that. You have 30 days. This is a new rule we have. You have 30 days from this class to take these exams. Like I said, you fail the FAA test. We'll have one-on-one session. Wait 7 days to take it again. Once you pass them, give me 2 or 3 days to, not give me. As soon as I see you pass, I'm going to submit my request to the training department to put in for your GCA, and they send that request up the chain of command to headquarters. This whole process takes about 2 or 3 days. But if you pass both exams and you still haven't got your GCA yet, feel free to control. You can say I told you to do so. Nobody's going to bother you. So that's it. Just go to that website, take the exam. Once you get your GCA, if you're interested, like I said before, to control at JFK, Miami, LAX, Chicago, or the other crazy airports, don't be afraid to request additional training. That's what we're here for, especially the ATC operations. Contact me or Aldo, contact the ARTCC chiefs, training department, anybody. We're here to help you. We cannot training to visitors for, how would I say this? For specific functions such as approach and center, like for your next ratings. This is done through your division. The only thing we can provide training for is procedures, like controlling at Kennedy, controlling at Miami. What else can I tell you? Yeah, if you have any questions, you can unmute your microphone. You click on the top of your meeting. You can unmute the microphone and you can have a chat with me. You can ask in the chat room here. Aldo will be able to respond. If you're too shy to ask in public, go ahead, send me an email, or you can even add me on Skype at ICEFAXI. And that's our meeting. So go ahead. There we go. Okay, so if there's no further questions, go ahead to that website and to our academy, try taking the exams. And I will, reminds me. Let me find it here. I'm going to be sending a copy of this presentation and the Word document, with the example phraseologies. So if you want to hold off and taking exams until I send them out, as soon as we close out this meeting, I'm going to send an email to everybody here. So that's it. I want to thank you all for attending, and thank you for your interest in the United States Division. Good luck with your GCA exams, and I look very much forward to seeing you on our scopes, helping us out, especially at events too. So thank you. Any questions? Feel free to ask. Feel free to leave if you want to go.